Admiral Tejo stood on the bridge of the orbital defense platform Sol's Pride, watching the morning sun rise over Earth. It was a peaceful Tuesday morning. The coffee in his cup was still warm, and his crew was running their usual morning checks. Everything seemed normal until the space around Earth suddenly filled with alien ships. The ships appeared without warning. One moment the space was empty, and the next moment hundreds of dark vessels hung in the sky like angry clouds. Tejo had never seen anything like them. They were sleek and black, shaped like sharp knives cutting through space. Each ship was 3 times larger than Earth's biggest space station. "Sir, we're getting readings from unknown vessels," called out Lieutenant Park from the sensor station. His voice was shaking. They just appeared out of nowhere. No engine signatures, no approach vector. They're just there. Tejo put down his coffee cup. His hands were steady, but his heart was racing. "How many ships?" "Over 200, sir, and they're moving into attack positions around the planet." Before Tejo could respond, every communication channel on Earth started receiving the same message. The voice was cold and mechanical, speaking in perfect English, Chinese, Korean, and every other human language at the same time. "People of Earth," the voice said, "you are now under the authority of the Vorthak Empire. Your planet contains resources that we require. You have been classified as a primitive species, unworthy of continued existence. Surrender immediately or face complete destruction. You have 72 hours to comply." The message ended, and for a moment the entire planet was silent. Then the bombing began. The first strike hit London. A single beam of blue light shot down from one of the alien ships and struck the center of the city. Where London had been, there was now a crater of melted glass 5 miles wide. 8 million people were gone in an instant. Tejo watched in horror as the same thing happened to Tokyo, then New York, then Moscow. Each city vanished in a flash of blue light, leaving only smoking craters behind. The alien weapons were beyond anything humans had ever imagined. Their most powerful nuclear weapons looked like firecrackers compared to this. "Sir, incoming message from Earth Defense Command," reported Communications Officer Kim. Her face was pale with shock. "Put it through," Tejo ordered. Dr. Ji-Yun's face appeared on the main screen. She was calling from deep underground, from one of the emergency bunkers that had been built after the first alien contact 50 years ago. Most people didn't know about that contact, or about the preparations that had been made since then. "Admiral," Ji-Yun said, her voice calm despite everything happening around them. "Execute Protocol 7 immediately. All defense platforms are to maintain position and wait for further orders. Do not, repeat, do not engage the enemy vessels." Tejo stared at her. "Doctor, they just destroyed 4 major cities. We have to respond." "No," Ji-Yun said firmly. "Trust me, Admiral. Everything is going according to plan." "What plan?" Tejo demanded. "What aren't you telling us?" Ji-Yun's expression was grim but determined. "The plan we've been working on for 50 years. The plan that began the day the first alien ship crashed in the Pacific Ocean. We've been waiting for this moment, Admiral. Now follow your orders." The transmission ended, leaving Tejo and his crew staring at a blank screen. Around Earth, more cities were being destroyed. The alien ships moved with perfect coordination, taking out major population centers one by one. Each strike was precise and devastating. No warning, no chance to evacuate, just sudden death from the sky. But something strange was happening too. Not all the cities were being destroyed. The aliens were being selective, hitting major capitals and industrial centers while leaving smaller cities alone. It was as if they wanted to break human morale without completely destroying the population. "Sir," Lieutenant Park called out, "I'm detecting movement on the surface. Multiple launch signatures from hidden facilities." Tejo moved to the sensor station. On the screen, he could see dozens of launch sites that hadn't been there an hour ago. Missile silos were opening in locations that were supposed to be empty farmland. Underground facilities were rising from beneath fake hillsides. Ships were launching from hidden bases that didn't appear on any official map. "Where did all this come from?" Tejo whispered. The answer came as he watched Earth's response unfold. The missiles that launched weren't using chemical propulsion or nuclear warheads. They moved too fast and hit too hard. When they struck the alien ships, the results were devastating. Ship after ship exploded in brilliant flashes of light. "Impossible," breathed Navigator Cho. "Those are our missiles, but they're using alien technology. How is that possible?" Taeho was starting to understand. For 50 years, while the public thought humanity was alone in the universe, their governments had been preparing for war. Every crashed alien probe, every secret first contact, every piece of recovered technology had been studied, reverse-engineered, and improved upon. The human response was swift and coordinated. Fighter aircraft that looked nothing like any known human design rose from hidden bases around the world. They moved like alien ships, with impossible speed and agility, but they bore the flags of Earth nations. On the ground, something even more incredible was happening. Human soldiers were engaging alien landing forces with weapons and armor that seemed to come from science fiction. The alien energy weapons that had destroyed entire cities barely scratched the soldiers' armor. Human weapons cut through alien defenses like they were made of paper. Taeho watched as a squad of human soldiers surrounded an alien dropship. The aliens inside were firing with weapons that could melt steel, but the human armor absorbed every shot. When the humans fired back, their weapons tore through the alien ship's hull like it was thin plastic. "This is impossible," muttered Weapons Officer Jang. "How are we winning? Their technology is centuries ahead of ours." "No," Taeho said, finally understanding. "Our technology is centuries ahead of what they think we have. We've been studying them longer than they've been studying us." The tide of battle was turning. Alien ships that had seemed invincible were falling to human weapons. Ground forces that had expected to face primitive resistance were being overwhelmed by soldiers in armor they couldn't penetrate. But Taeho knew this was just the beginning. The ships attacking Earth were scouts, an advance force sent to test human defenses. The real Vorthak fleet was still coming, and when it arrived, it would bring weapons that could crack planets open like eggs. The question was whether humanity's secret preparations would be enough to face what was coming next. As he watched another alien ship explode under human fire, Taeho realized that Earth's greatest weapon wasn't technology, it was time. For 50 years, humanity had been preparing for this exact moment. While the aliens had grown lazy and overconfident, humans had been planning, building, and waiting. The first strike was over and humanity was still standing. Now, the real war could begin. Lieutenant Colonel Minho crouched behind the rubble of what used to be a shopping mall. Around him, his squad was preparing for the impossible. Alien dropships were landing all over Seoul, and their job was to stop them with nothing but small arms and determination. At least that's what the aliens thought. The first Vorthak soldiers stepped out of their landing craft like they owned the planet. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms that moved with perfect coordination. Their armor was black and sleek, and their weapons hummed with deadly energy. They had done this 1,000 times before, on 1,000 different worlds. "Remember, your training," Minho whispered into his helmet comm. "Let them get close. Wait for my signal." The aliens advanced with casual confidence. Their scanners showed human life signs, but these primitives posed no threat. The energy readings from their weapons were pathetically weak. This would be over in minutes. When the first alien energy blast hit Sergeant Young Mi, everyone expected her to be vaporized. Instead, the beam bounced off her chest armor like it was hitting a mirror. The alien soldier fired again, then again with the same result. Young Mi stood up slowly, raised her rifle, and put 3 rounds through the alien's center mass. The advanced armor that had protected the alien from human weapons for centuries crumpled like paper. "What just happened?" demanded Private Byung-ho over the comm. Minho smiled grimly as he watched his squad engage the landing party. 50 years of preparation," he said. "Now move." The battle was over in minutes. 12 human soldiers had just destroyed an entire alien landing force without taking a single casualty. The aliens' weapons, designed to cut through any known armor, were useless against suits that had been specifically built to counter their technology. 3,000 miles away, Dr. Ji-eun watched the battle through satellite feeds from her command, bunkered deep beneath Seoul. The bunker had been built in secret, designed to coordinate Earth's defense using technology that officially didn't exist. "Activate all sleeping protocols," she ordered her staff. "It's time to wake up the sleepers." Around the world, Hidden facilities came online. In the mountains of Colorado, a door opened in what looked like solid rock, revealing a hangar full of fighter aircraft that moved without wings. Beneath the ice of Antarctica, submarines that had never touched water launched into space using engines that bent reality around them. In the deserts of Australia, an entire army base rose from underground, complete with soldiers who had been training for this exact scenario their entire lives. The base looked empty to satellite surveillance, but underground it was larger than most cities. Captain Su Jin was one of those soldiers. She had spent 20 years preparing for a war that most people thought would never come. Her training had included alien psychology, alien tactics, and alien technology. She knew more about Vorthak combat doctrine than most Vorthak commanders. "All units, this is Control." Dr. Ji-Eun's voice came through every communication channel. "Protocol 7 is now active. Phase 1 objectives are complete. Initiating Phase 2. Su Jin led her company out of the underground base and into the Australian sunlight. Above them, Vorthak ships were circling like vultures, waiting for ground. Resistance to collapse so they could begin harvesting the planet's resources. They didn't have to wait long for resistance, but it wasn't the kind they expected. The human aircraft that rose to meet them were impossible. They accelerated too fast, turned too sharply, and took hits that should have destroyed them. When they fired back, their weapons cut through Vorthak shields like they weren't there. On the ground, human armor units rolled out of hidden bases around the world. The tanks looked wrong to alien eyes. They moved too smoothly and fired too accurately. Their armor was too thick, and their weapons too powerful for a species that wasn't supposed to have left their home planet yet. Commander Velkoth of the 47th Vorthak Assault Fleet watched his forces get systematically destroyed by an enemy that shouldn't exist. His species had conquered 300 worlds using the same tactics. Send in the scouts, destroy the major cities, land ground forces to mop up resistance, then strip the planet bare. It had never failed before. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of his science officer. "Their technology readings show primitive chemical propulsion and kinetic weapons, but they're using energy shields and plasma cannons." "I don't know, sir," the science officer replied. "Nothing about this makes sense. It's like they've been preparing for us specifically." They had been. For 50 years, ever since the first alien probe had crashed in the Pacific Ocean, humanity's best minds had been working on one problem: how to fight an enemy with superior technology. The answer had been simple in concept, but difficult in execution. Study the enemy. Learn their weaknesses. Build weapons designed specifically to exploit those weaknesses. Then wait. Engineer Yujin was part of Team 7, one of hundreds of specialist units trained for this exact moment. While the main battle raged above, her team was infiltrating a crashed Vorthak dropship using tools designed specifically for Vorthak technology. "Bypassing security now," she reported, her fingers dancing over alien controls that she knew better than the aliens who built them. "Standard Vorthak encryption, just like the simulations." The dropship systems came online under human control. Within minutes, Yujin had turned the alien vessel into a weapon against its own kind. The ship's communication array began broadcasting a virus that her team had spent decades perfecting, designed specifically for Vorthak computer systems. Fake. Virus spread through the alien fleet like wildfire. Ships that had been coordinating perfectly suddenly couldn't talk to each other. Weapons systems shut down. Navigation computers started giving random directions. Within an hour, the Vorthak fleet was in complete chaos. But the most important thing the virus did was send a signal home. Every Vorthak ship was equipped with faster-than-light communication designed to keep the home fleet informed of conquest progress. The virus hijacked that system and began transmitting everything the aliens were seeing back to their commanders. For the first time in Vorthak history, a conquest fleet was losing to a supposedly primitive species. The home fleet would receive detailed recordings of human technology that shouldn't exist, tactics that shouldn't work, and weapons that shouldn't be possible. General Wu Sung coordinated the global defense from a mobile command center that could relocate anywhere on Earth. In minutes, he had been planning this campaign since he was a young lieutenant, studying every piece of alien technology that fell into human hands. "Phase 2 is complete," he reported to Dr. Ji-Eun. All alien landing forces have been neutralized. Their orbital fleet is in retreat. Estimated casualties on our side. Less than 1%. Excellent, Jiun replied. Now prepare for Phase 3. The real fleet will be here in 6 days. Around Earth, the scattered remains of the Vorthak advance force were fleeing in panic. They had expected to face stone tools and gunpowder. Instead, they had encountered an enemy that seemed to know their every weakness, exploit their every flaw, and counter their every move. The survivors would carry a message back to the Vorthak Empire. Earth was not what it seemed. The primitive species they had dismissed as insignificant had somehow become the most dangerous enemy they had ever faced. But Earth's defenders knew this was just the beginning. The advance force had been a test, a probe to measure human resistance. The real Vorthak fleet was already on its way, bringing weapons that could shatter continents and turn entire planets into ash. The question now was whether 50 years of preparation would be enough to face what was coming next. Commander Hei-Wan floated in the vacuum of space, watching the massive Vorthak flagship drift powerless before her. 3 days ago, this ship had been leading the attack on Earth. Now it belonged to humanity. The operation had started 12 hours. Earlier, when engineer Yu Jin's team successfully hijacked a Vorthak transport using access codes they had been perfecting for decades. The aliens still couldn't understand how humans knew their security protocols better than they did. Transport 7 Alpha, you are cleared for docking, came the voice from the flagship's traffic control. The Vorthak officer sounded tired and frustrated. 3 days of fighting humans had shattered their confidence. Nothing was going according to plan. Yu Jin guided the stolen transport through the flagship's shields, using approach vectors that she had memorized years ago. The transport was filled with 40 human commandos wearing armor that looked exactly like Vorthak military gear. From the outside, they appeared to be returning alien soldiers. "Remember," Hei-Wan said over the private comm channel, "we know this ship better than they do. We've been studying the blueprints for 30 years. Every corridor, every access panel, every security checkpoint. Move fast and stay together." The transport docked with a soft thud. Hei-Wan led her team through the airlock and into the alien ship. The corridors were exactly as the intelligence reports had described them. Gray walls, dim lighting, and the constant hum of alien technology. They moved through the ship like ghosts. When they encountered alien crew members, the commandos simply nodded and kept walking. Their disguises were perfect, down to the smallest detail. The aliens saw what they expected to see, their own people returning from a mission. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. While the alien fleet was distracted by Earth's conventional defenses, small teams of humans were infiltrating their command ships. Each team carried a virus specifically designed to take control of Vorthak computer systems. "Engineering section secured," reported Team Alpha over the comm. "Bridge access confirmed," added Team Beta. "Weapons control is ours," said Team Gamma. Hei-Wan reached the flagship's central computer core without encountering any resistance. The aliens had no idea that their ship was being taken over from the inside. She connected her device to the main computer and began uploading the virus. The virus was humanity's masterpiece. For 50 years, human programmers had been studying alien code, learning how their computers thought, how their security worked, how their entire digital infrastructure operated. The virus didn't just attack the computers, it made them think. They were still working normally while secretly following human commands. Within minutes, the flagship's weapons systems were under human control. The massive ship that had been bombarding Earth's cities suddenly turned its guns on the rest of the Vorthak fleet. "What are you doing?" screamed the flagship's captain over the ship's communication system. "Stop firing on our own vessels!" But the weapons officer couldn't stop. His console showed everything was normal, that he was firing on human targets. The virus was feeding false information to every system on the ship, while the weapons destroyed alien vessel after alien vessel. The same thing was happening throughout the Vorthak fleet. Ship after ship found its weapon systems compromised, its navigation computers giving false readings, its communication arrays broadcasting human propaganda instead of alien orders. Admiral Krell Thor, commander of the Vorthak assault fleet, watched. His forces tear themselves apart from the bridge of his command ship. In 40 years of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. The humans had somehow turned their own technology against them. "Sir, We're receiving surrender demands from the human fleet, reported his communications officer. Human fleet? Krell demanded. What human fleet? The answer appeared on his main screen as Earth's orbital defenses revealed themselves. What the aliens had thought were simple defense platforms were actually the forward elements of humanity's space navy. Ships that had been hidden in plain sight for decades suddenly powered up their real weapon systems. Captain In-Ho commanded the lead human battleship, a vessel that had been disguised as a mining station for 20 years. Now it revealed its true nature as its stealth systems shut down and its weapons came online. All vessels, this is Earth Command. In-Ho broadcast on all frequencies. You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. The human fleet that emerged from hiding was impossible. Ship after ship appeared as stealth systems deactivated around Earth's orbit. They had been there all along, waiting and watching, preparing for this exact moment. General Wu Sung watched the battle from his command center, feeling a mixture of pride and sadness. Pride because the plan was working perfectly. Sadness because so many people had died to bring them to this point. All Vorthak vessels are requesting terms of surrender, reported his aide. Accept their surrender, Wu Sung ordered, but keep our weapons trained on them. This is far from over. He was right. The assault fleet had been defeated, but it was just the first wave. Intelligence reports suggested that the main Vorthak battle fleet was already on its way to Earth. Hundreds of ships carrying weapons that could crack planets. The advance force had been a test. The real invasion was still coming. Dr. Ji-un joined Wu Sung at the command center's main display. Around Earth, the defeated alien fleet was being herded into containment orbits by human vessels. It looked like a complete victory, but both of them knew better. How long until the main fleet arrives? She asked. 4 days, Wu Sung replied. Maybe 5 if we're lucky. And how many ships? Our best estimate is 800 vessels, including planet killers. Ji-un nodded grimly. The advance force had consisted of 200 ships, and defeating them had required every trick humanity had developed over 50 years of preparation. The main fleet would be 4 times larger and infinitely more dangerous. Then we move to Phase 4, she said. It's time to take the war to them. Wu Sung looked at her in surprise. You want to attack their home system? That's suicide. No, Ji-un said with a cold smile. That's exactly what they think we'll think. They're expecting us to hunker down and defend Earth. They're not expecting us to come to them. She activated the main display, showing a star map that extended far beyond Earth's solar system. Hidden bases appeared on the map, scattered across dozens of star systems. Bases that had been built in secret over the past 30 years using technology reverse-engineered from alien crashes. For 30 years we've been building a network, Ji-un explained. Hidden facilities, supply depots, communication relays. The aliens think we're trapped on one planet. They have no idea we've been expanding into their territory for decades. The plan was ambitious beyond belief. While the Vorthak main fleet was traveling to Earth, human strike forces would hit their home system, their supply lines, their communication networks. The aliens would arrive at Earth to find their empire in flames behind them. But it would require splitting Earth's forces at the worst possible time. Half would stay to defend the home planet. Half would launch the most dangerous mission in human history. It's a huge risk, Wu Sung pointed out. Yes, Ji-un agreed. But if we just sit here and wait for them to come to us, we'll lose. Our only chance is to make them fight on multiple fronts, to force them to choose between attacking Earth and defending their home. As if to emphasize her point, the main display showed new contacts appearing at the edge of the solar system. Long-range sensors were picking up the signatures of massive ships traveling faster than light. The main Vorthak fleet was ahead of schedule. Make the call, Ji-un ordered. Launch Phase 4. Around Earth, the human fleet that had just won an impossible victory now prepared for an even more impossible mission. Half would stay to defend their home. Half would travel deeper into space than any human had ever gone, to strike at the heart of an alien empire. The real war was about to begin. Director Kyung-ho stood in the center of a facility that shouldn't exist, watching humanity's greatest secret come to life. The Titan shipyards hung in the shadow of Saturn's rings, invisible to all sensors except the most advanced human technology. For 30 years, this place had been building ships for a war that most people thought would never come. Final checks complete on all vessels, reported Chief Engineer Bo Ram. Earth's vengeance is ready for deployment. Kyung-ho looked through the massive observation window at the ship that would lead humanity's counterattack. Earth's vengeance was 3 miles long and bristled with weapons that the aliens had never seen before. It had been designed for one purpose: to survive anything the Vorthak Empire could throw at it. "What's our timeline?" he asked. "The main Vorthak fleet will reach Earth in 48 hours, Bo Ram replied. "Our strike force needs to leave in 6 hours if we want to hit their home system before they realize what's happening." The plan was simple in concept, but incredibly complex in execution. While the aliens focused their attention on conquering Earth, human forces would attack the heart of their empire, cut off their supply lines, destroy their communication networks, and force them to choose between pressing their attack or defending their home. Captain In-ho had been chosen to command the strike force. He stood on the bridge of Earth's vengeance, looking at star charts that showed the route to the Vorthak home system. It was a journey that would take his fleet through hostile territory controlled by alien forces for over 1,000 years. "Sir, we're receiving final intelligence updates from the advanced scouts," reported Navigator Lieutenant Jae Kyung. The scouts were human agents who had been operating in alien space for decades, posing as traders from minor species while mapping enemy positions and weaknesses. Their reports painted a picture of an empire that was powerful but overconfident, spread thin across hundreds of worlds. "What do we know about their home system defenses?" In-ho asked. "Surprisingly light," Jae Kyung replied. "They have orbital, platforms, and patrol fleets, but nothing like what we expected. It seems they never thought anyone would be crazy enough to attack them at home." In-ho smiled grimly. That was exactly the kind of thinking that made empires vulnerable. The Vorthak had grown so used to being the hunters that they had forgotten how to be the hunted. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "All ships prepare for departure. Around Earth's vengeance, 40 other human vessels powered up their engines. Each ship represented decades of secret construction, using technology that combined human engineering with alien science. They were faster than anything the aliens had, more heavily armed, and completely invisible to Vorthak sensors. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Da-Yun was preparing for the most difficult defense in human history. The main Vorthak fleet was massive beyond imagination. 800 ships, including dreadnoughts that could destroy continents with single shots. "How many ships do we have left for defense?" she asked her staff. 60 capital ships, and about 200 smaller vessels," replied Colonel Tae-min. "Plus the orbital platforms and ground-based defenses. It wasn't nearly enough. Under normal circumstances, such a force would be wiped out in minutes by the approaching alien fleet. But these weren't normal circumstances. Humanity had been preparing for this exact scenario for 50 years. "Activate the Hidden Shield Protocol," Da-Yun ordered. Around Earth, what looked like empty space suddenly filled with defensive platforms. Massive weapons systems that had been hidden using stealth technology for decades revealed themselves. Orbital fortresses disguised as asteroids powered up their shields. The space around Earth transformed from a lightly defended planet to the most heavily fortified position in the galaxy. But the real surprise was waiting deeper in the solar system. Commander Seok-jin stood on the bridge of Liberation's Dawn, one of 12 ships hidden in the asteroid belt. His fleet had been waiting here for 20 years, crews training in shifts, ready to respond at a moment's notice. "Long-range sensors are picking up the Vorthak fleet," reported sensor operator Kim Mi-young. "They're decelerating from faster-than-light speed. Estimated arrival at Earth in 36 hours. "Perfect," Seok-jin said. "Signal the other ships. Prepare for Operation Hammerfall." The plan was to let the alien fleet get deep into the solar system, focused entirely on Earth, then hit them from behind with everything humanity had. The aliens would find themselves trapped between Earth's defenses and a fleet they didn't know existed. Dr. Dong-jun watched the preparations from his command center on Luna. As head of the Xenological Warfare Division, he had spent his entire career studying alien psychology and combat patterns. The Vorthak were predictable in their arrogance. They always attacked the same way, using overwhelming force to crush resistance quickly. "They're following the standard pattern," he reported to Earth Command. "Full frontal assault with planet-killer weapons in the center of their formation. They're not even trying to be clever about it. That arrogance would be their downfall." The aliens had no idea that humans had been studying their tactics for decades, learning their patterns, preparing counters for every move they might make. But Dongjun knew that the real secret weapon wasn't technology or tactics. It was information. For over a century, humanity had been in contact with other species oppressed by the Vorthak Empire, dozens of races that had been conquered, enslaved, or destroyed by alien expansion. "Activate the Liberation Network," he ordered. Across the galaxy, resistance movements on 100 different worlds received the same message. The time had come to strike back. Species that had been waiting for decades for a chance to fight their oppressors suddenly found themselves equipped with human weapons and tactical support. The Vorthak Empire had grown too large to defend effectively. They controlled thousands of star systems through fear and superior technology. But fear only worked as long as people believed resistance was hopeless. Human success against the advance fleet had shattered that belief. On the world of Kepler 442b, a species called the Helkin received weapon shipments that had been hidden for 30 years. On Proxima Centauri C, the Zephyrian resistance activated communication jammers that cut off Vorthak coordination. Throughout the Empire, subject species began striking at alien infrastructure with weapons specifically designed to counter Vorthak technology. The Empire that had seemed unshakable was suddenly fighting fires on hundreds of fronts. Admiral Kethvar, Supreme Commander of the Vorthak main fleet, received the first reports of rebellion as his ships entered the outer solar system. At first, he dismissed them as panic from local commanders, but as the reports multiplied, he began to understand the scope of what was happening. "Sir, we're losing contact with entire sectors," his communication officer reported. "The rebellion is spreading faster than we can respond to it." "Impossible," Kethvar replied. "These species don't have the technology to coordinate attacks across such distances." But they did have that technology now. Human communication networks, human weapons, human tactical support. The galaxy was rising up, and at the center of it all was the small blue planet that the Vorthak had dismissed as insignificant. "Should we turn back and deal with the rebellions?" asked his tactical officer. "No," Kethvar said firmly. "We destroy Earth and the rebellions will collapse. Cut off the head and the body dies." He was wrong. The rebellions would continue with or without Earth. But his decision to press the attack would give humanity exactly what they needed, a chance to show the galaxy that the Vorthak Empire could be defeated. As the alien fleet approached Earth, Captain Inho's strike force was already deep in enemy territory, racing toward the Vorthak home system. Behind them, they left a trail of destroyed supply depots and communication relays. The Empire's ability to coordinate its response was crumbling. The real war had begun, and for the first time in 1,000 years, the Vorthak Empire was losing. Commander Seok Jin's strike force dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Vorthak home system, and what they found there changed everything. The system that was supposed to be the heart of a galactic empire looked more like a fortress under siege. "Sir, I'm reading massive defensive positions around the primary world," reported Sensor Officer Lee Na-young. "But they're not pointing outward. They're pointing inward, toward the planet." Seok Jin studied the tactical display with growing amazement. The Vorthak homeworld was surrounded by weapons platforms, but they weren't designed to repel invaders. They were designed to keep the planet's population under control. "It's a prison," whispered Navigation Officer Park Min-sik. "They've turned their own homeworld into a prison." The truth was even worse than that. Intelligence reports from human agents embedded in the Empire revealed that the Vorthak ruling class had become so paranoid about rebellion that they had enslaved their own people. The empire that claimed to bring order to the galaxy was built on the oppression of everyone, including themselves. "New contacts," Na-young reported. "Multiple ships approaching from the inner system. They're broadcasting identification codes, but, sir, these aren't Vorthak vessels." The ships that appeared were unlike anything in the Vorthak fleet. They were smaller, faster, and built using technology that combined elements from dozens of different species. As they drew closer, their communication came through in perfect Korean. "Human vessels, this is Admiral Da-yoon of the Liberation Fleet. We've been waiting for you." Seok Jin stared at the main screen in shock. Admiral Da-yoon was supposed to be defending Earth, not leading a fleet in enemy territory. "Admiral, how did you get here?" he asked. "The same way you did," Da-Un replied with a smile in her voice. "Through very careful planning and a lot of help from friends. We've been building this coalition for 30 years, Commander. It's time you met your allies." What followed was the most extraordinary briefing in human history. The Liberation Fleet wasn't just humans. It was representatives from over 40 different species, all united by one common goal: the destruction of the Vorthak Empire. Dr. Dongjun appeared on the communication screen from his command ship, the Humanity's Promise. "Commander Seok-jin, welcome to the real war. What you're seeing here is the culmination of a century of diplomatic work. Every species the Vorthak have oppressed, every world they've conquered, every people they've enslaved, they're all here, and they're all ready to fight." The fleet that surrounded Seok-jin's ships was massive beyond imagination. Thousands of vessels from dozens of different worlds, all equipped with weapons and technology that had been secretly developed over decades of cooperation. The humans hadn't just been preparing to defend Earth, they had been organizing the galaxy. "How is this possible?" Seok-jin asked. "It started with the first alien crash," Dongjun explained. "When we recovered that ship 90 years ago, we didn't just study the technology. We used it to contact other species in the galaxy. We found out we weren't alone in suffering under Vorthak oppression." The story that unfolded was incredible. For nearly a century, human diplomats had been secretly traveling throughout the galaxy, making contact with oppressed species, sharing technology, and building a network of resistance. Every world that the Vorthak had conquered too quickly, every species they had dismissed as primitive, every rebellion they had crushed, all of them had been contacted by humans and offered something the Empire couldn't provide: hope. Captain Junseo commanded a ship called Freedom's Call, crewed by humans and 3 different alien species working together. His vessel was typical of the Liberation Fleet, a fusion of technologies and techniques that created something greater than the sum of its parts. "The Vorthak are about to learn something they never understood," Junseo explained to Seok-jin during a tactical briefing. "They think conquest is about superior technology and overwhelming force, but real victory comes from unity and cooperation." The attack on the Vorthak home system began at exactly the same moment that the alien main fleet reached Earth. While the Empire's attention was focused on conquering humanity's homeworld, the Liberation Fleet struck at the heart of their power. But this wasn't a battle of destruction. It was a battle of liberation. The weapons platforms surrounding the Vorthak homeworld were quickly neutralized, not destroyed, but captured, and turned against their former masters. The orbital defense grid that had kept the planet's population enslaved became the tool of their freedom. On the surface of the Vorthak homeworld, something extraordinary happened. The population that had been oppressed for centuries by their own ruling class rose up in rebellion. They had been waiting for this moment, preparing in secret, and when the Liberation Fleet arrived, they were ready. "Sir, we're receiving transmissions." "From the surface," reported Communications Officer Song Ye-jin. "The planetary population is requesting immediate assistance. They've taken control of the capital city and are holding the government quarter." The Vorthak Empire was collapsing from within. Species that had been loyal subjects for centuries were suddenly revealing that they had been part of the resistance all along. Military commanders who had served the Empire faithfully for decades were turning their fleets over to the Liberation Alliance. Admiral Krell Var, commanding the Vorthak forces at Earth, received the first reports of the rebellion just as his fleet engaged Earth's defenses. What he had expected to be a simple conquest had turned into the most difficult battle of his career. Earth's defenders were fighting with a desperation and skill that made no sense for a supposedly primitive species. "Sir, we've lost contact with the home system," his communications officer reported. "All long-range communications have been cut off." "That's impossible," Krelvar replied. "Nothing can penetrate our communication networks." But something had. The virus that engineer Yu Jin had developed specifically for Vorthak systems was spreading through their entire empire, turning their own technology against them. Ships that tried to coordinate with each other found their computers giving false information. Weapons systems that tried to target enemies instead fired on their own allies. The empire that had seemed invincible was tearing itself apart. Back at the Vorthak homeworld, the liberation was proceeding faster than anyone had expected. The planetary population wasn't just rebelling. They were winning. Centuries of oppression had taught them exactly how their oppressors thought, exactly where they were vulnerable, exactly how to hurt them most effectively. "The government quarter has fallen," reported Surface Coordination Officer Kim Hae-jin. "The Vorthak High Command is requesting terms of surrender." But Seok-jin wasn't interested in surrender. He was interested in justice. "Tell them they can, surrender to the species they've oppressed," he replied. "Let the people they've enslaved decide their fate." What followed was the most rapid collapse of a galactic empire in recorded history. Within 72 hours, the Vorthak control network had been completely dismantled. Their fleets were either destroyed, captured, or had defected to the Liberation Alliance. Their communication systems had been turned into propaganda networks, broadcasting messages of freedom to every world in the galaxy. The empire that had ruled through fear and intimidation for over 1,000 years simply ceased to exist. Dr. Dongjun watched the final collapse from his command ship, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction because the plan had worked beyond their wildest hopes. Sadness because so many people had suffered for so long to reach this point. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Earth," reported his aide. "The battle there is over. Admiral, Dae-Yoon's defensive strategy worked perfectly. The Vorthak main fleet has been completely destroyed." Dongjun smiled. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Humanity had helped liberate the galaxy from tyranny. Now they had to help build something better in its place. The Age of Empire was ending. The Age of Alliance was about to begin. Fleet Admiral Young-ho stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, watching representatives from over 300 species arrive for the most important gathering in galactic history. The space station hung in orbit around Earth, built from the wreckage of the Vorthak fleet that had tried to conquer humanity just 6 months ago. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The weapons that had been meant to destroy Earth were now being used to build a better future for the entire galaxy. "The final delegation has just arrived," reported his aide, Captain Min Jae. "The Galactic Council representatives are requesting an immediate audience." Young-ho smiled. The old Galactic Council had been the Vorthak Empire's puppet government, rubber-stamping their decisions and providing a facade of legitimacy for their conquests. Now, they were desperate to remain relevant in a galaxy that had moved beyond their control. "Let them wait," Young-ho said. "Today belongs to the people, who actually fought for freedom." In the station's main assembly hall, President Min Ji was preparing to address the largest gathering of free species in galactic history. The hall had been designed to accommodate every form of life imaginable. Atmospheric zones for species that breathed different gases, gravity fields adjusted for different physical needs, translation systems that could handle over 1,000 languages simultaneously. It was everything the old Galactic Council had claimed to be, but never was. Truly, inclusive. "Citizens of the galaxy," Minji began, her words being simultaneously translated into hundreds of languages. 6 months ago, the Vorthak Empire believed they could crush the spirit of freedom by destroying Earth. They were wrong. Today, we gather not as conquerors, but as liberators. Not as rulers, but as partners. The response was overwhelming. Representatives from species that had been enemies for centuries were standing together, united by their shared commitment to freedom and cooperation. The human concept of democracy was spreading throughout the galaxy, adapted and modified by each species to fit their unique needs. Captain Jun Seo walked through the station's corridors, marveling at what they had built. His ship, Freedom's Call, was docked nearby, its crew consisting of humans, Zephyrians, Helkans, and 3 other species working together as equals. 6 months ago, such cooperation would have been impossible. Now it was becoming the norm. 3. Liberation Alliance had grown beyond anyone's expectations. What had started as a desperate coalition of oppressed species had become the foundation for a new galactic civilization. The principles were simple: no conquest, no slavery, no oppression. Every species had the right to govern themselves, to develop their own technology, to choose their own destiny. But with freedom came responsibility. "Sir, we're receiving distress calls from the Outer Rim," reported Communications Officer Park Sung-ho. "Remnant Vorthak forces are raiding civilian settlements." Junseo sighed. The war might be over, but peace still required constant vigilance. Scattered groups of Vorthak loyalists were still operating throughout the galaxy, unable to accept that their empire was gone. They had turned to piracy and terrorism, targeting the very people they had once claimed to protect. "Signal the fleet," Junseo ordered. "Time to remind them that the galaxy has new guardians." The response was swift and decisive. Liberation Alliance patrol fleets were stationed throughout the galaxy, ready to respond to any threat to civilian populations. But these weren't conquest fleets like the old empire had used. They were protection forces, mandated to defend the innocent and withdraw once the threat was neutralized. Dr. Dong Jun had been appointed as the first director of Galactic Cooperation, tasked with helping species transition from imperial rule to democratic governance. It was a massive undertaking that required understanding hundreds of different cultures, political systems, and social structures. "The Kepler system is requesting assistance with their first democratic elections," reported his assistant, Dr. Song Hei-rin. "They've never had competitive voting before." "Send a diplomatic team," Dongjun replied. "But make sure they understand we're there to advise, not to control. Every species has to find their own path to freedom." That was the fundamental principle of the new galactic order. Humanity had learned from Earth's own history that democracy couldn't be imposed from outside. It had to grow from within, adapted to each species' unique characteristics and needs. The results were remarkable. Species that had been bitter enemies under Vorthak rule were forming trade partnerships and cultural exchanges. Technologies that had been hoarded by the Empire were being shared freely, leading to unprecedented scientific advancement. Engineer Yu Jin was now leading a joint research project involving scientists from over 50 different species. They were working on something that would have been impossible under the old Empire, a universal translation and communication system that would allow any species to communicate with any other instantly. "The quantum entanglement communicators are ready for testing," she reported to the research committee. "If this works, we'll be able to coordinate galactic democracy in real time." The test was successful beyond their hopes. For the first time in galactic history, representatives from every inhabited world could participate in discussions simultaneously, regardless of distance. The galaxy was becoming truly connected. But the most important change wasn't technological, it was philosophical. Admiral Da Yun commanded the Liberation Alliance Defense Fleet, the largest military force in galactic history. But unlike the Imperial fleets that had come before, this force was dedicated to protection, not conquest. Their ships were designed for defense and peacekeeping, not planetary bombardment. "We've received a request for intervention from the Vega system," reported her tactical officer. "Local warlords are trying to re-establish Imperial rule." "Denied," Daun replied without hesitation. "If the people of Vega want freedom, they'll have to fight for it themselves. We'll provide support, but this is their battle to win." That was another fundamental principle of the new order. Freedom that was given could be taken away. Freedom that was earned lasted forever. The old Galactic Council was finally dissolved 6 months after the liberation. Their representatives gathered one last time in their ancient chamber, built to intimidate rather than inspire. The vote was unanimous. The council that had enabled centuries of oppression was no longer needed. In its place rose the Galactic Assembly, with rotating leadership and representatives chosen by their own people rather than appointed by distant rulers. The first session was held aboard Unity Station, in a chamber designed for cooperation rather than domination. President Min Ji gave the opening address, but her words weren't about human achievement. They were about galactic potential. "We stand at the beginning of a new age," she said. "An age where every voice matters, where every species has the right to determine its own future, where diversity is celebrated rather than suppressed. The galaxy is vast enough for all of us to flourish." The Galactic Assembly's first act was to establish the Universal Declaration of Sentient Rights, guaranteeing fundamental freedoms for every intelligent being in the galaxy. The second was to create the Mutual Defense Compact, ensuring that no single species would ever again face conquest alone. Captain Junseo was assigned to patrol the former Imperial core worlds, helping species transition to self-governance. It was challenging work, but incredibly rewarding. Worlds that had been industrial slaves for centuries were rediscovering their own cultures and traditions. "Sir, we're approaching the former Vorthak homeworld," reported his navigator, Lieutenant Choi Yun-ji. "They're requesting permission to join the Liberation Alliance." Jun Seo smiled. The species that had once oppressed the galaxy was now asking to join the community of free peoples. Their application would be considered carefully, with input from all the species they had wronged. But if they were sincere about embracing democracy and cooperation, they would be welcomed. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Peace wasn't achieved through conquest, but through understanding. Justice wasn't delivered through punishment, but through redemption. 1 year after the liberation, Young Ho stood again on Unity Station's observation deck. The view had changed dramatically. Where once there had been empty space, now there were dozens of ships from hundreds of worlds, coming and going in peaceful commerce and cultural exchange. The galaxy was alive with possibility. Species that had been isolated for centuries were sharing knowledge and friendship. Technologies that had been weapons of oppression were being transformed into tools of progress. The fear that had dominated galactic civilization for millennia was being replaced by hope. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Outer Rim," reported Captain Min Jae. "The new colonies are reporting successful harvests and requesting trade agreements." Young Ho nodded with satisfaction. The galaxy was growing, expanding not through conquest, but through voluntary cooperation. New worlds were being settled by mixed-species communities working together to build better futures. The age of empire was truly over. The age of alliance had begun, and the galaxy was better for it. Humanity's greatest victory wasn't defeating the Vorthak Empire. It was showing the galaxy that there was a better way to live, a better way to grow, a better way to reach for the stars together.